Dolan's brother moved back to the town where he spent his teenage years and early 20s about 3 years ago. Being back brought back a lot of memories, which made him wonder what happened to all the people he used to hang out with before he moved to Dallas in 1999. So, he stopped by the comic book store that he hadn't visited since he was a teenager. There, he saw a Strangers in Paradise graphic novel, which reminded him of a friend from high school that loved that series. He picked it up, and he began to thumb through it when he accidentally backed into someone because he didn't look where he was going. Dolan's brother looked the person's way to apologize, and standing before him was the very girl he had just thought about. They had coffee afterwards, and to this day, they still hang out, every once in a while.
In high school, Sidious went out with a girl for only 1 week. He quickly realized that they weren't right for each other and broke it off. Then he started dating someone else a short time later. But Sidious's ex didn't like being dumped, so she started calling him and leaving messages trying to get him back. But by far, the weirdest thing she did was put on a fake voice and pretend to be Sidious's new girlfriend. With her fake voice, she told Sidious she wanted to break up, and told him to get back with his ex instead. Sidious saw right through this because her impersonation was terrible, and she forgot to hide her phone number.
When Emoji was 5 years old, his dad worked in a scrapyard. His parents considered it safe, so Emoji and his brother hung out there all the time. One day, Emoji decided to climb behind the wheel of a big old tow truck from 1927 that had always been there at the back of the yard. It had a push button start and a button on the floor for gas. Like any child, Emoji started pushing things and making noises, pretending he was driving. Suddenly the truck, which had been sitting there for 20 to 30 years, just up and started. It was still in gear from when it was parked. Emoji's dad heard a loud bang from across the yard, ran over to see what had happened. He found Emoji sitting behind the wheel of a tow truck that had backed halfway up a tree. The tree overlooked a 100-foot cliff edge and was the only thing stopping the truck and its passenger from going over.
During Animation's freshman year of high school, she and her two best friends were hanging out with a guy at the library. During the conversation, Andy had started to talk about Hamilton the musical. It was all fine and dandy until he said, "You know, Hamilton isn't real, right?" Seriously, he just said Alexander Hamilton wasn't real.
Salty Squid was at a bar one time having a good time. He didn't like to drink, so he just had a Coke. As he was about to leave, some guy jumped on the pool table and started yelling, "Yeehaw! I'm a cowboy!" That's pretty typical drunk behavior, so he didn't think anything of it. A couple of days later, Salty Squid found out the guy was later arrested for having sex with someone's car.
When Zaraganba was 12, his parents hosted a party and his uncle was the first one there. His uncle brought some beer, but promised not to drink any until the children went to bed. And his parents let it slide. Zaragamba went to his room eating some candy which was shaped like little fishes. He was sitting on a big blue rug on the floor when his uncle walked in and said, "Wait, this isn't the bathroom." He saw Zaraganba's candy fish and thought they were real. He then grabbed handfuls and threw them at the blue rug yelling, "Swim, motherfucker, swim!" He then proceeded to roll around on the carpet as if he was swimming, eating the fish off of the ground. After about a minute, he stopped and puked all over the floor. Zaraganba just sat there looking at his uncle in disbelief.
So in Salty Squid's elementary school, the teachers were trying to figure out how to fix the issue with the younger grades not being able to find their buses on time. Their solution to this was to hire Salty Squid and other 5th graders to hide signs with the bus numbers on them in the hot summer sun, while the bus driver would talk their ears off in the air-conditioned buses. The weirdest part was that they paid them $5 a week, but in a school card, so they couldn't use it for anything but the school store, which was a crappy little stand that sold erasers and sharpeners. The only real positive to it was that Salty Squid got a sick tan, along with sunburns. Robo and her sister liked to dance, and usually dance costumes are pretty revealing, like a bathing suit. One day when Robo was on the train with her mom and sister, Robo's little sister said, "Look, mommy, I want those dance costumes." They looked over to see 5 strippers in their work clothes. Robo and her sister were pretty young at the time, so her mom didn't really want to explain the difference between dance outfits and exotic dance outfits. So Robo's mom just said, "We'd never find them. They're probably expensive."
Pringle is really good friends with a girl from his school. They study together, eat together, and he's even gone over to her house a few times. But in all the time Pringle has spent with her, he has never seen her kitchen. That is until one day when he was over at her house and asked if they could cook up some sweet pizza rolls. He went into her kitchen expecting it to be normal and boring like the rest of the house, but what he saw terrified him. The kitchen was decorated from top to bottom with Pringle's biggest fear: clowns. The walls had creepy clown wallpaper, the plates and cups were all clown themed, and every shelf had at least 20 or more tiny clown statues staring at him. When Pringle's friend came to look for him, she found him huddled in a ball in a corner. When she asked what was wrong, Pringle said,
Clowns! Clowns everywhere! All I wanted was some pizza rolls!
When Sacred Snoopy was 9, she went to her best friend's house for a sleepover where they planned to stay up all night. It turned out that her best friend's dad was having a few of his friends over as well. At about 1 in the morning, Sacred Snoopy went into the living room to grab a horror movie to watch. That was when she saw all the men dancing naked to the song, I Am a Gummy Bear. A man was in the corner taking a shit while another man was trying to have sex with a lamp. Sacred Snoopy ran back upstairs and after that night never returned.
When Gergak was younger, he was sitting in a car with his mom and sister, having an interesting conversation about movies. When the movie Twilight came up, he laughed and yelled, "Twilight sucks!" His mom asked him if he had ever watched it or read the books. He told her he hadn't. He just read online that it was bad. So his mom swerved the car around, and the next corner took him straight to the cinema to see the next screening of Twilight. She told him he isn't allowed to complain about something unless he'd actually seen it. For the record, he saw the whole movie and decided that Twilight does indeed suck.
One time at a friend's party, Ramona was sitting on a terrace trying to get some fresh air when a very large man walked up to her and sat on her lap. She told him to get off, but instead he blew a huge fart straight into her face. She yelled and kicked him away and went straight to the washroom. Later on in the evening, the man walked up to her again and whispered, "You have a comfy lap." She slapped him and let him know what she thought of him. That was the last time that she attended that friend's party. Andy was at a Wizard World Comic-Con, heading over to watch the Smash Brothers tournament. On her way there, she saw a guy dressed as Superman, wearing a kilt, riding a unicycle, and playing the bagpipes. As he rode by, Andy was rolling on the floor with laughter. She later saw the same guy doing the same thing, only dressed as Mario instead of Superman. Andy considers it probably the best thing that she has ever seen. One day, Pandora dressed up really nicely, and her parents thought so too. Since she didn't usually dress up like that, they told her to text her grandmother a picture. Her dad gave her the number and she took a picture of herself and wrote, "Hi Grandma, this is your granddaughter. I miss you and I love you." About 5 minutes later, she got a text back, and the person wrote, "This isn't your grandma. Sorry." Pandora is still embarrassed about it to this day.
When Honeybits was little, she overheard the phrase, "Don't waste your breath," and took it literally. She believed that everyone had a limited amount of air in their bodies and would die when it ran out. So, Honeybits decided to be careful not to waste her breath. Her parents and teachers worried that she'd gotten really quiet, but Honeybits was just thinking that she wanted to prolong her own life. Dolan was working as a barista in a small cafe, and one day a coworker was preparing food when he stopped for a toilet break. The manager accidentally walked in on his coworker mid-shit and quickly closed the door. That was the day that his manager realized that Dolan's coworker had actually been using the same gloves to handle raw meat and wipe his ass. The staff had to quickly recall all the food prepared by his unprofessional coworker. He was fired on the spot and could have caused a ton of people to get food poisoning.
Spinal Palm was just doing the usual scanning and bagging at the grocery store when he saw her mum and her kids run into the store and straight to the bathroom. After about 3 minutes, Spinal Palm saw the mum come out of the bathroom with her kids. She came up to the register and bought 2 packs of diapers. While she's doing this, her 2-year-old daughter walked out of the bathroom completely naked. Everyone stayed in shock, and the mum quickly finished checking out and ran back into the bathroom.
When Shima was little, she went to a party that had jumping castles. She was having lots of fun jumping around till a few older people came in for a bounce. Unfortunately, they were too heavy and the jumping castle ended up deflating very quickly. Shima couldn't get out in time, ended up getting stuck right in the back corner, where the wall and the floor joined. She couldn't get out and the heavy rubber was stuck right on her face. Shima cried out, thinking she's gonna suffocate, but no one could hear her. Luckily, someone re-inflated the jumping castle just in time, but it was a close call. When Melissa was 10 years old, she used to think that if she ever tried to touch a boy, she would explode. It all started when she was 5 years old. Her friend high-fived the guy and began coughing so badly she fell to his side, sprawled across the floor, and then just barfed everywhere. Melissa was a couple of feet away and she thought the bath looked like body parts that had been blown out of her to smithereens. So just in case, she never touched a boy until she was 11 when she accidentally brushed past a guy at school. To her relief, she did not blow up.
At school, Snoopy had a big crush on this one guy named Simon. Her best friend really wanted Snoopy to tell Simon how she felt, and one day, she finally became convinced. Snoopy then asked him out on a date, but he politely told her that he wasn't interested. The next day at school, Snoopy was horrified to see Simon and her best friend kissing. It turned out that her friend had violated the best friend code by asking Simon out right after he had rejected Snoopy. Snoopy was devastated. She had to spend the next few years watching her crush and her former best friend be one of those annoyingly cute couples.
One time, Ramona was leaving a reptile convention when she saw a homeless man yelling at the guard near the entrance. He yelled at the guard to let him in, or he would have Satan chew his head off like tobacco. Ramona quickly ran to her car, then just out of the corner of her eye, she saw the hobo chasing her. He grabbed her arm, took the baby king snake she had bought, and started to run. Luckily, the security guard caught him and returned the snake to her. They arrested him for assault, theft, and possession of illegal drugs. Before he was shoved in the back of the police car, he started yelling things like, "Satan will kill you!" and the snake! He can see through the eyes of the snake!" and other stupid shit.
In 8th grade, Sweet Commando took out a girl to a small local diner and shared a large order of ribs. She asked, "What do you plan to do with your life after graduating high school?" Sweet Commando paused, then said,
"I think I might join the Navy. Why?"
She stood up, laughed, and said, "Nope," before walking out of the front door and putting her thumb up to hitchhike. Afterwards, whenever they passed each other in the hall, she would say stuff like, "Don't drown," and "Hope you're not claustrophobic." Man, with a girl voice that good, I could cover for Melissa. While Doopy was working as a clerk in a grocery store's bakery department, she got a phone call. The person on the other end couldn't have been older than 6. The child asked, "Why y'all's cake prices so high?" Doopy explained,
The corporation sets the prices, not the individual store.
Then the kid said, "Well, me and my family are gonna shop at Walmart from now on." Not willing to beg a kid to stay, Doopy said,
Okay.
There was a silence for 2 seconds. Then a manly woman yelled, "Yeah, well, you sound like a bitch!" and then immediately hung up.
The most frustrating thing a roommate of mine has ever done has just been chuck out some of my food. I was at university and living on a shoestring budget, and what that sometimes meant was that some food would stay in the fridge for maybe a few days longer than it should have. I'll always remember coming home one time and just really wanting a lasagna I'd made a couple of days earlier and finding it in the bin. And I was absolutely devastated, and I never forgave him for that one lasagna. Jake, if you're out there, lasagna.
In high school, Spinal Palm was in a class that was full of girls. One day they had to give a speech, but the only other guy in the class was away. Spinal Palm was nervous, but he got up in front of his class full of girls and began his presentation. About 3 minutes in, one of the girls decided it was appropriate time to interrupt the nervous Spinal Palm and call out,
Hey, your zipper's down!
Spinal Palm looked down and zipped it up as quick as he could, but it was too late. The whole class was already giggling at him. He had to suck it up and finish his presentation, but by that point, he was so shaken up that his voice and body were trembling. Looking back on that memory, he wishes he could punch his former self.
When Ramona was 16, she subbed for the receptionist at a salon. One day, an elderly woman wearing a red pantsuit, luxurious brown fur, stiletto heels, and oversized sunglasses came in carrying her little Pomeranian. She went up to Ramona and asked what kind of haircuts they offered. Ramona pulled out a style book of the latest hair trends and dyes. The lady settled on dyeing her hair in just a simple cut. As Ramona led her to the part of the salon where they do hair, she asked, "Can you do the same for my dog?" Ramona had to tell her politely no, since this was clearly a salon for humans. She flipped out and started barking at her like she was stupid. Luckily, the owner stepped in.
The most embarrassing thing that ever happened to my brother was when he was 10 years old. He was sitting on the toilet with headphones on listening to loud music, and all of a sudden the toilet door exploded off its hinges and a fireman was just standing on the other side. His mother was standing there with a look of fear and shock on her face. Apparently he'd been sitting there for over an hour, but he couldn't hear his mother banging on the door, so she called the emergency services. The fireman shook his head and left, and my brother sat there with his pants down and a red face.
When Shima was little, she lived next door to this crazy lady. Every day, the woman had these intense arguments with her husband. The whole street could hear them screaming and throwing furniture at each other. Shima was terrified of them, so imagine her surprise when one day her mom announced that the crazy lady next door would be looking after her and her baby sister for the night. Shima spent half the night hiding upstairs, but eventually her babysitter called her down to watch her sister. Shima assumed her babysitter was going to go make them a snack or something. But instead, she started posing on the couch and taking suggestive selfies. She did this all night and completely ignored the kids she was supposed to be babysitting. When her mom came home, Shima begged her not to leave them with any crazy neighbor ladies again.
Pringle's family grew up on a large farm where there was always something new to eat. His grandparents never let any food go to waste, so they would eat parts of animals that you might call untraditional. He remembers his grandma sitting down to eat an entire pig's brain, telling Pringle that it made his own brain smarter. His grandma would chow down on other parts of the pig, intestines, stomach, tongue, and even the testicles. It was only when he grew up and made friends that he realized that those things weren't exactly normal.
The weirdest thing Doopy does when she's nervous is play with her belly button. She pulls at it until it's almost out of its socket. She usually does it when she's studying for a test that scares her, or if she feels nauseous. Doopy tries not to do it in public, though sometimes she caught herself doing it at school. Her mom has yelled at her for doing it, and even tried to scare her by saying that she might get cancer in her belly button. The warning never worked, and Doopy continues to do it because it feels very fucking satisfying.
One day, James Shark was walking with a new girl at school, but neither of them seemed to have anything to say. There was an awkward silence, and James Shark's best idea for a conversation starter was to run up a concrete wall to do a backflip. When he landed, he fractured his left ankle and had a giant scrape from his thigh down to his ankle. The girl just stood there in shock. Needless to say, they didn't talk much for the rest of the year.
When she was 8, Doopy's babysitter served her a full plate of bell peppers for dinner. There were at least 50 of them on the plate. Doopy said,
I don't like them. They're gross.
The babysitter said, okay, before taking the plate and throwing it out of the window. It landed in a garden where there was mud and a lot of bugs. Then the babysitter picked up the plate and the bell peppers, put them on the table in front of Doopy and said, eat it! Doopy said,
Ew!
The babysitter slapped her and shouted, if you don't eat this, I'll shove it up your ass! Doopy never threw up so much in her life, but when her mom came home earlier than expected, she saw what was going on and immediately fired the babysitter.
Well, the cringiest thing someone ever said to me is anytime I go up to them and I tell them my name, and I say my name is Pringle the One, and then they say, what do you own? The Pringle Company? And I say, no, I don't, because if I did, you wouldn't have a job.
Until he was 7, Sid believed that real animals were put in mascot costumes. Then, on his 7th birthday, a friend of his told him that instead of live animals, they put dead people in those costumes. That, understandably, freaked Sid out even more than the live animals. But the lies didn't stop there. Another time, he was told that the mascots were really just genetically modified kids with low GPAs that are turned into furries. Even though Sid knows the truth about them now, he was certainly terrified when he was little.
Doopy has never been good at being sociable. But when she was younger, it was horrible. She would say things that normal people would be ashamed to say. One time she was 7, Doopy was at school and wanted to talk with someone. So she went to a girl in her class and said,
Hey, guess whose panties I'm wearing right now?
She said, well, yours? Doopy said,
No, my mom's panties.
it was true because all of her panties were in the washing machine, so she had to borrow some from her mom. Doopy was so ashamed she said that, even though she was really young.
Spinal Palm and his friends are fans of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. They like to talk about it, roleplay, and even strike some of the infamous JoJo poses. One day, Spinal Palm and his friends were in the school courtyard after lunch debating on which JoJo character had the best poses. The debate got so heated that they even started doing the poses in an effort to prove which pose was the best. A group of girls nearby started watching their posing showdown. It was extra embarrassing because the girls thought they were putting on a show for the ladies. The good news was the display made the girls into JoJo fans themselves, but Spinal Palm and his friends didn't end up talking about the series much for the rest of the school year because they were scared of embarrassing themselves again.
When Hellbent was a teenager, he liked to hang out in a place called the Clubhouse. It was an awesome hangout for stoners and runaways, and the place, well, let's just say a lot of crazy pranks happened there. One time, Hellbent was using the clubhouse shower when someone quietly picked the lock on the bathroom door. Without Hellbent noticing, they snuck in, stole all of his clothes, and hung them at the top of the tallest tree outside. Hellbent had to walk through the house butt naked. Then he had to go outside in the cold winter weather and climb the tree to get his clothes while everybody from the clubhouse laughed at him. It was definitely one of the most embarrassing moments of his life.
Slapped Ham invited his girlfriend over for a bit to watch some Netflix. She had agreed to come over for a bit, but seemed a little uncomfortable about something. So when she showed up, they sat down with some popcorn and watched some movies. When he asked her what was wrong, she refused to tell him. Then there was a loud-ass knock on the door. Slapped Ham got a little worried that it was a robber, so he didn't answer. There was a loud gunshot, and the door handle had a gunshot-sized hole in it. Then things got worse when her dad walked in holding a shotgun. Slapped Ham called the police, and when they came, her dad was arrested and taken into custody. Then she broke up with him for getting her dad arrested. Damn, overprotective parents.
I would say the funniest thing I ever seen a little kid do was actually playing hide and seek with his mom in the mall. The little kid was always hiding away from his mom. She could never find him. It was really bad. Her mom would go to other places and ask, "Have you seen my son?" And then when they would respond, they didn't know where he would be. He would always be hiding inside of the clothing departments, just inside of those clothing racks. His mom would never be able to find out. Till one day, she actually played the prank on him. She was like, "If you're gonna play it on me, I'm gonna play it on you." And then one day, the little kid was looking for his mommy. He was going everywhere. "Mommy, mommy, where are you?" He was confused and he started crying. He was so sad. And people were trying to help him, but they kind of did laugh behind his back. And then his mom came out of nowhere and she was like, "Ha! Gotcha!" It was the most messed up thing that could ever happen to me.
One night, Doopy was lying in bed messaging a guy called Dave. They flirted for a while, and then Dave asked Doopy if she'd send him some nudes. Doopy was a bit of an exhibitionist, so she agreed to send him a shot of her lady parts. Before she could talk herself out of it, she fired up WhatsApp, found Dave's name in the contact list, and sent him the pic. But that's when Doopy realized she had 2 Daves in her contacts. One of them was a co-worker, and sure enough, Doopy sent it to the wrong one. Her next shift with co-worker Dave was, well, awkward.
In high school, Hellbent and his friends were in a band together. They decided one day that it was time to get serious and start advertising their gigs. Hellbent had the idea to go to their local shopping plaza and put gig flyers on the cars. As he was doing this, an old lady saw him lifting a windscreen wiper and thought he was trying to break in. So she ran and got the closest cop that she could find. Unfortunately for Hellbent, this cop happened to be a huge asshole. He didn't believe a word of Hellbent's story and made him spend the night in jail, all for trying to get people to come to his gig.
Pandora's weirdest job was walking her neighbor's dogs up Main Street. It seemed like a perfectly normal job, but there was a catch. The neighbor wanted both Pandora and the Chihuahuas to wear bright pink tutus the entire walk. She said she would pay Pandora extra if she went along with the strange condition. Every day, strangers would honk at Pandora as they drove up Main Street. Neighbors who were washing their cars and mowing their lawns would drop everything to ask Pandora what she was doing. Every time, Pandora would awkwardly answer,
My job.
Ramona dreamt she was a scientist, and she was experimenting on some sort of blue liquid in a lab. Suddenly, a shadowy figure ran into her, making her drop the liquid and smashing it on the floor. A bit of liquid fell on her shoe and it turned into a scaly claw. Soon, she had completely transformed into a dragon. Ramona's surrounding morphed slowly into what looked like a country cottage with a massive chunk taken out of it. Some sort of meteor had crashed into it, and Ramona was standing right on top of the smoking rock. She spread her wings and flew far away with a sense of freedom. She flew directly towards the sun until everything went white. When Ramona woke up and started to walk around, she bent her legs and jumped, expecting to fly. She jumped so high she hit her head on the overhead light.